The soldier who could not stop winning. On heroic inflation. A soldier had been told from boyhood that his purpose was to win. He had been told this first by his father, who had been a soldier in his time and who had lost his life at the battle of a famous river. His father had told him this, in the months before that battle, in a series of small evening conversations in their farmhouse kitchen. The men of our family, the father had said, are made for winning. Your grandfather won his wars. I will win mine. You will win yours. It is what we are for. The father had then ridden off to the battle of the famous river and had been killed in the first hour of the third day. The boy had been 7. He had been raised after his father's death by his mother, who had not contradicted the father's teaching. She had known no other way to honor the man she had loved. She had told the boy throughout his childhood that his father had been a great winner, that he himself was made for winning, that his life would be a long succession of wins crowned by a final great win at the end. She had not specified what the final great win would be. She had implied that it would, when it came, be unmistakable. He had been a good student of this teaching. He won the battles of his apprenticeship. He won the battles of his first campaign. He won the great war his country had been preparing for since before he was born. He came home in a parade. The parade went down the main street of the capital. There were flowers. There were children on shoulders. There was music. The mayor of the capital placed a wreath on his head and called him the savior of the nation. He smiled. He had been preparing to be the savior of the nation since he was 8. He went out again the next year and won another war, smaller, against a country no one had been preparing for. The country had been small. Its army had been smaller. The war had been a matter of 3 weeks and 2 engagements. He had returned in another parade, smaller than the first, but still a parade. The supply of enemies began after that to run out. This was a problem he had not been prepared for. He had been taught to win. He had not been taught that the supply of wars was finite. He looked, in the 3rd year after his coming home, for new enemies. There were in the immediate region none. The country had no neighbors it was not at peace with. The bandits in the hills had been suppressed by his predecessors. The pirates on the coast had been cleared by the navy. He won a war against a small country with no army. It had been 3 days. The small country had surrendered before the war began, and he had marched in and accepted the surrender, and the parade on his return had been smaller still. He won a skirmish against a band of bandits. He won, in a famous incident that had once been celebrated and was now remembered with embarrassment, a hunting trip against an old bear that had not killed anyone in 20 years. The bear had been an old bear. It had been, in fact, a kind of pet of the region, with a name, with a den that the local children visited. The soldier had killed it with a single shot. The town in which the bear had lived had not put on a parade. The town had been quiet for some weeks after the killing. He kept marching. He had begun by his 40th year to do this on his own initiative. The country had no enemies. The country had not asked him to find any, but he could not in himself stop. He had been wound up in his childhood for winning, and the winding could not be released. He fought the rivers. He drained one. It was a small river. He drained it by diverting its source. The fish in it died. The valley it had run through became dry. The farmers who had depended on it for irrigation moved away. He reported to the capital that he had won. He fought the mountains. He cut a road through one. It took him 3 years and the death of 200 laborers and a great deal of the country's treasury. The road, when completed, was useful. The country did, in fact, need a road through that mountain, but the road had not been a war. He had presented it as one. The capital by then was tired of his presentations. They received him politely. There was no parade. He fought the seasons. He won several of them. He fought winter in his 52nd year by leading an army into the high snow of the northern provinces. He lost half the army to the cold. The survivors emerged in the spring. He announced that he had defeated winter. The country, by then, was beginning to laugh at him quietly. He did not hear the laughter. The laughter was in the kitchens, not in the council chambers, and he did not, in his later years, visit kitchens. He fought the moon, finally, lifting his sword to the sky and challenging it on a clear night, and the moon did not respond, and he reported that he had won. The report was filed in the capital. The clerk who filed it did not know what to do with it. He filed it under victories of the soldier, which was, by that time, a thick category, and did not show it to his superiors. The superiors had stopped reading the file. The soldier kept marching. He fell at last in a field he could not name, fighting an enemy who was not there. He had ridden out that morning with 20 men. He had ordered them to follow him to a place he had seen in a dream the night before. The dream, he had told them, contained the enemy. The men had ridden with him because they had been ordered to. They had not in their hearts believed there was an enemy. They had been correct. The field was empty. It was an ordinary field at the edge of an ordinary village. The wheat in it had been recently harvested. The stubble was knee-high. He drew his sword. He charged. He charged the empty field. He shouted the war cry he had been shouting for 50 years. He cut with his sword at nothing. His men behind him did not draw their own swords. They sat on their horses at the edge of the field and watched. He charged for some minutes. He fell. He fell off his horse and did not get up. The men dismounted and ran to him. He was, by the time they reached him, dying. He had not been wounded in any visible way. He had simply given out. Something in his chest had stopped working. His face was very white. An old woman came out from a nearby cottage. She had been watching from her window. She brought a damp cloth. She knelt beside him in the stubble. She wiped his face with the cloth. "Soldier," she said. He could still speak just. "Yes, why did you not stop?" He looked at her. She was very old. She had, in her own life, lost 3 sons to wars he had won. "I did not know how," he said, "how not to win, how to lay it down. They taught me to win. They never taught me to lay it down. I did not know there was anything else for a man to do." He coughed. "My father," he said, "would have told me. He died at the battle of the famous river when I was 7. He would have told me if he had come back. He did not. My mother did not know. The country did not know. I did not know there was a thing to know. I have all my life been winding myself tighter. I could not, in my own mechanism, find the release." The old woman did not for some time speak. "There is a release," she said at last. "It is in every man. It is small. It is hard to find. It is found in most men by being held by another person, a wife, a child, a friend who weeps. The release lets the winding go. The winding, when released, does not become a losing. It becomes a kind of rest. You did not, in your 50 years, allow yourself to be held. You won too much. The wives were intimidated. The children were intimidated. The friends were intimidated. You were, in your last 20 years, alone with your sword and your enemies. The enemies ran out. You are dying because the winding cannot be released by yourself. It must be released by another. I am now, sorry to say, too late for you. I am holding you. I will hold you until you go. The release will happen in this last hour in my arms. It is not, in this case, a release into more life. It is a release into death, but it is at least a release. It is what you have, in some sense, been looking for since you were 8. She held him. She held him in the stubble of the harvested field, while the 20 men stood, with their hats off, in a half-circle around them. He died in her arms perhaps an hour later. She closed his eyes. She buried him. On the grave she put no stone. She planted a small tree instead. She did not know what kind it was. It grew for many years and never bore fruit, but it gave shade to anyone who sat under it, and the people who sat under it tended to weep, and not to know why. The tree is, in some province, still there. The soldier is, in some province, still beneath it. The man trained only to win has no instruction. For the day the wars end, he will fight the moon. He will lose and call it winning because there is no other word in his mouth. The release is small. It is found in being held. The soldier who is not held will keep marching until he falls in an empty field. The old woman by the cottage will, with luck, be near enough. The tree she plants over the grave will not bear fruit. It will give shade. The people who sit under it will weep. They will not, on the whole, know why.